Right. Almost 6. A few seconds. And we're gonna get started as soon as the clock strikes 6. Right? Okay, so you're feeling?
I feel blessed.
Excellent. All
I
right,
feel
let's get it
blessed to be in
started.
the company of you, Robert, and
No
all these
problem.
wonderful people.
Let's get it popping. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 6th webinar in the Responsible Hillside Living series. We are talking today with Mattheaus Bailey. We're talking about finding your perfect peace. I'm Robert Thompson, principal architect here at Aki Workshop, a firm that practices and advocates for responsible hillside living. So, a little bit about our guest today, who graciously accepted our, begging him to come and talk to us. Just a little bit about real estate. So, Mattheaus Bailey is a young, ambitious realtor with 4 years experience serving in residential and commercial real estate. He also manages and runs the growing real estate agency, Propsolve Realty. Need to tell me where that name came from afterwards. Mattheaus sees a marketplace with a redefined sense of ease in transacting real estate through people and innovation. With the help of his associates, he has built a solid clientele of buyers, sellers, and landlords so far in his 4 years. In his spare time, Mattheaus likes creating fun memories with loved ones and immersing in nature to counterweight the adrenaline of real estate. I like that, the adrenaline of real estate. Mattheaus, welcome.
Absolutely, Robert. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for having me this afternoon. I am blessed, as I said, to be in the presence of yourself and your team and these wonderful people. I know we have some rain this afternoon, so I'm happy to see the turnout online. That's probably a good thing. Most people are inside.
Yes.
So you did ask about the name.
Yes.
Maybe I can touch another bit. So as it reads on my screen, Propsolve Realty, that's the name of the agency. You'll see that on my jersey as well.
Nice.
And the name came about from combining different words. So you'd see it spelled Propsolve with a V at the end, but not with an E. And that is very intentional.
All right.
The V is short for viable. The SOL is short for solutions. So I kind of rearrange the words because it was actually viable property solutions. And that is how Propsolve came together. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Lots of clarity here. So we want to frame the conversation this evening around 5 questions. I'm just going to jump right into it and let you just educate us. So the first question is, who does a real estate agent serve?
Great question. So it really all depends because it's not a one size fits all. Generally, real estate agents serve sellers, especially if they are the ones that would have listed the property on the market, right? And they are known as the listing agent. And they are in the business of selling and negotiating properties on behalf of the people that own them, the sellers, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, this does not mean that the buyer gets the shorter end of the rope, right? A buyer will benefit from the knowledge of a listing agent because we do understand that a well-informed buyer increases the likelihood of a sale.
Right.
At the end of the day, we're in the business of bringing buyers and sellers together. Think of us as somewhat of a dating app for real estate. Overall, this takes a high degree of skill, fairness, and ethics, because you're dealing with buyers and sellers, all while trying to keep in mind who you're ultimately serving, which is the seller. But
Nice.
on the flip side, buyers can work with a real estate agent to represent them in negotiations, liaising with different stakeholders, and general facilitation of the buying process. This is referred to as a buyer's agent. So notice I mentioned a listing agent earlier, and now I'm referring to a buyer's agent. So it's important to understand the difference, because a buyer's agent typically has no affiliation with the seller whatsoever, and they are working exclusively on the buyer's behalf. Yeah.
Right. Nice. Nice. Didn't know that one. And so the buyer's agent would get his commission from the buyer once he makes a sale. Or
No,
makes a
that's incorrect. So what happens is the commission comes from the seller. So the listing agent would have negotiated a commission with the seller.
right.
And when the buying agent and the listing agent comes together with the clients, that is referred to as a...
One second.
You can unmute
Right.
Mattheaus.
You're muted, Mattheaus.
You can unmute, sorry.
Yes,
Yeah.
where was I?
All right. Well, you corrected me there. So the seller still pays the commission. All right.
Well,
So
yeah, the seller pays the commission to the listing agent, and then the listing agent has an agreement with the buyer's agent, and they pay them after. It's called a co-broke.
I see. All right. Cool. And what are things people should know when looking for land?
That's an absolutely great question. And maybe I can be a bit controversial by asking a question back to the audience. How do you feel about looking for land? Maybe you could drop some responses in the comment section. But I know most people, they may feel intimidated, they may be uncertain, they may not know what the next steps are, who to talk to. It may just be a bit of confusion. And that's why people are here this afternoon. And my objective at the end of the webinar is to hopefully make you into someone who is ready, willing, and able to purchase property with confidence. All right, so the first thing I'll bring up is pre-qualification. And this is something that I ask clients usually when I'm interviewing them for the first time, when they approach me to purchase property. So I would typically ask them, have you been to the banks to seek out pre-qualification for a mortgage yet? And if so, what is the amount? So you need to know what your budget is before you begin shopping real estate, and it really helps the realtor to narrow down options for you and makes for easier process and saves time holistically. The second thing I would talk about is savings. So in order for a transaction to initiate, you need to have a down payment or a deposit, right? And this is paid upon the signing of the sale agreement. Now that deposit is in the form of 10% of the value of the property. I have seen in some cases where it can be 5%, and maybe that is because the banks are now offering 95% financing. So it's important to have that saved when shopping around for real estate. Another thing that kind of surprises people is closing costs. I often have clients saying they didn't know about this until they kind of already getting ready to make an offer in the transaction. And you don't want to be in that position. You want to be empowered to move through a transaction with ease. And that's why your realtor would guide you. So one type of closing cost you should bear in mind is your stamp duty cost. What is stamp duty? Stamp duty is essentially a tax that you pay on certain legal documents for the transfer of real estate. That could be your deed of conveyance, your deed of mortgage, a deed of release. These are things that require a stamp. And that is more or less a tax that is paid to the Board of Inland Revenue in Trinidad and Tobago. All right. The second thing they should be aware of is legal fees. You will be required to seek out the services of an attorney when buying real estate. And if you're going through the bank, you should actually use the attorney that is on the bank's panel. So the bank has a panel of special attorneys that they work with, and you can save up to 50% in legal fees by using the same attorney that the bank uses for the deed of mortgage, if you use that same attorney for the deed of conveyance. You are entitled to using your own attorney, but the bank is making it mandatory for you to use their attorney for the deed of mortgage. So you might as well use them as well for the deed of conveyance. You would save a lot of money.
So there's two costs there, the deed of conveyance.
The deed of conveyance.
And what's the other one?
The deed of mortgage.
The deed of mortgage, okay.
That's right. So the deed of conveyance is essentially the document that transfers the right of ownership from the seller to the buyer. The deed of mortgage is essentially the bank having an arrangement with the buyer, saying that these are the terms of their arrangement with regards to payment of the mortgage, interest rates, stuff like that.
Okay. Excellent.
I actually have some more things to touch on. The valuation fees. Valuation fees are 1/4% of the value of a property plus VAT. And finally, there's a mortgage handling fee, which is about 1% of the value of the property that is paid to the mortgage institution. So these are different costs that people aren't aware of when looking for land, and they should factor it into their budget. It's very important.
Because the bank won't offer, that is not a part of your loan.
Well, some banks, and I've seen Scotiabank offer cashback, where they give you the funds for the closing costs kind of like after the transaction happens. So they do get back some funds towards the closing costs in a sense.
Okay.
You know, banks, they tailor different strategies to appeal to the public. Yeah.
Excellent.
And maybe I can touch on these quickly as well. You should be aware of your non-negotiables. And when I say non-negotiables, these are things that you typically cannot change once you make a decision to buy a property. So these things should be decided up front. You want to know the locations that you want to consider, the safety and security, whether you want to be in a gated community or one that isn't, the type of land that you're looking for, whether you want leasehold land or freehold land, and do you understand the pros and cons of those different types of lands? Access to different amenities, things like schools, grocery stores, shopping, beaches, recreation, your workplace. These are things that you want to have in mind before or even during, but you want to be clear about what your non-negotiables are. Yeah. And finally,
no, sorry, go on.
Oh, okay. So the last thing I would talk about on this particular question is requirements of the bank. So for final approval, the bank takes you through 3 stages, right? There's pre-qualification, there's pre-approval, and there's final approval.
Yep.
So the final approval stage is where the transaction has already begun, and the bank needs certain documents in order for the mortgage to be issued. And these documents involve your town and country plan approvals, WASA clearance certificate, a land and building tax receipt, corporation final approvals, a survey plan or cadastral sheet, and clear and marketable title to the property, of course. Yeah.
All
so
right.
those are some things that the bank would need in order to complete the transaction.
So that's a thorough set of things that one needs to consider before.
Absolutely. It's a lot. I could probably write a book on this and issue it to the persons on the call.
That'll be very useful. So another question would be, how best can a buyer be served by a real estate agent?
Great question. So you can think about 3 ways. The first one, a buyer will benefit from having the agent negotiate on their behalf. Secondly, they would be able to benefit from the provision of market data, insights, and just general guidance. And thirdly, they would also benefit from the network that a real estate agent has built from completing numerous transactions. So remember, I spoke about attorneys on the bank's panel and valuators on the bank's panel. We have already established relationships with those persons, and we make it easy for them to connect with them. So if I can just jump into negotiations a bit more, the agent will typically pick up on things or see things in a property just because we are accustomed walking through homes with different buyers, and we might find things that would score you negotiating points and allow you to get the best possible price for the property. And if I was to touch on market data, insights, and general guidance, we typically interact with a lot of professionals in the field, right? And this makes us privy to a lot of information that the general public isn't aware of, surrounding prices of homes that would have sold within the area, the socio-economic and cultural appeal of that particular neighborhood, or upcoming developments and the completion dates of those developments. There's a lot of information that we would have access to. So it would make sense to use a realtor than to walk through this process on your own.
Right.
Yeah, and I spoke about having connections with different professionals. We typically have a larger team of people working behind us, and those are attorneys, evaluators, surveyors, architects like yourself. And the mere fact that we have already established these relationships, they benefit from that relationship that we have because of the ease of access that it creates. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. That's very useful. Another important question is what pain points, and I think you touched on that a little bit a while ago, but what pain points does a real estate agent solve for a buyer?
Okay. Yeah, I did kind of touch on some of it, but maybe I can expand.
Because if I'm a buyer, if I'm a buyer and I'm like, let's do this myself, you know?
Right.
But I don't know.
Right. Absolutely. And most people think they know it all. But most people are a bit foggy when it comes to what it is they want in a property. They're not really clear. And as a realtor, we do a little bit of surgery by asking the right questions in order to allow them to gain the clarity that they need. This helps us to narrow down options for the buyer and shortlist relevant properties for them to see, which will save them a ton of time from they having to go and look at properties themselves online or physically going there. And this, we kind of position them in front of the properties that they would want to make offers on, right? That's one pain point that we solve. Another thing is that it can be quite a daunting process for a buyer going about this alone. They may not be aware of pertinent information. Purchasing property can be a bumpy ride. We all know this, right?
Yes.
And your realtor is going to provide you with guidance to get you through step by step in order to make the process much more bearable.
Excellent. And that's,
So we have some comments coming in from what Mattheaus had asked.
All right, well, let's have a look at some of these comments. So one question here, if you're buying land and has no building on it, do you still need to have a cash flow sheet and plans, etc., for the bank to finance it? What's your take on that one?
Well, yes, as I would have mentioned earlier, cadastral sheet is a requirement by the bank. And if you don't have immediate access to the cadastral sheet, I believe you can go into the Ministry of Surveys, Land and Surveys, and they will be able to pull it up for you if you don't have immediate access to it. But it is a requirement for the banks.
Okay, perfect. And another comment, well, this is just a comment. To everyone on the call, we'll be sending out a short presentation along with the video link. So all this wealth of information that Mattheaus is sharing with us will be available to everyone to look at again. All right. Any more questions here? Someone was asking, what are the different titles of land, deeds, and etc.?
The different titles of land.
Yeah.
Well, there's generally two types of land in Trinidad and Tobago. We have the common law land, and we have the RPA land. So the RPA stands for Real Property Ordinance. Those are the two types of title of land that we have here in Trinidad.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Cool. Another one here is seeing a lot of land for sale that has cash buyer, no approvals, etc. What's the risk involved in buying these? Excellent question.
That's an exceptional question, and I thought about touching on that earlier, but it was a lot for me to get across, so I'm happy it came up. So when you see cash buyer needed, they typically would not have the town and country approvals or the corporation final approvals for the land. And they are looking for someone who is going to take on the risk of buying that and go through the tedious process of getting those approvals themselves. So it is risky because you're doing a cash transaction as opposed to the bank. The bank is a bit more rigid with their processes and their requirements. So they will take extra steps to not just protect you, but to protect themselves, because their cashes would also be at risk. So I would probably advise them to seek the counsel of an attorney, because attorney will ultimately have to do a title search on the property for you. And if the title looks good and they have the other documents available, then I don't see a problem with the cash purchase.
Excellent. Excellent. I hope that helps, Russell. There's a few more questions coming in, but I'll hold them until we get
until the question segment.
Yeah,
well, I'm happy to see that people are engaged.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Keep them roving and coming.
All right. So, as a real estate agent, what kind of pain points do you have dealing with working with buyers and sellers? Okay, so maybe I can touch on the buyer side, and I kind of touched on this earlier, which is revolving around pre-qualification. If it is, you typically find that realtors ask this question to buyers because we're trying to save everyone time. When we have to show a property, a lot of people get involved. Sometimes the vendor has to come and open up the property, or the property manager has to come. We have to come, and sometimes another co-broking agent has to come. So a lot of people are moved when it is we have to show a property. So we try to get people who are ready, willing, and able to come and see those properties to just save everyone time. And gas isn't getting cheaper to move around. I know a lot of people, they want to come and see properties in order to help them visualize themselves buying a property. But there's a lot of photos and videos online. I know a lot of people might say walking through a property is a different experience as opposed to seeing them online. Yeah. But the pain point that I have is that we really need you guys to be ready, willing, and able to buy property, because a lot of people are moved in different spaces, and time is usurped when someone is not ready versus when they actually are. Right. Right. Another one I can touch on, Robert, is more specific to the industry itself. In Trinidad, we don't have a regulated industry. Almost anyone could wake up in the morning and call themselves a realtor. And because of that, it really puts a strain on the persons who are practicing professionally or who would have taken the courses to build their acumen as a realtor. It makes it a bit difficult because the market becomes saturated with persons who are not qualified or underqualified to practice real estate. And because of that, it gives us a poor reputation
with buyers and sellers. A lot of other professions are regulated. Architects are regulated, engineers are regulated, attorneys are regulated. Real estate, unfortunately, is not regulated.
But is there a certifying body?
Great question. There is an association area, the Association of Real Estate Agents. They have been lobbying for us to have legislation be put in place for quite a while. And they have made progress. I believe in 2020, there was a bill being discussed in Parliament in order to get this industry regulated. But that kind of died down after some time, like most things do in Parliament. And who knows when it may come up again. They've been talking about regulating this industry for a long time, probably before I was even born. So I don't know when it might actually happen, but hopefully soon. We'll continue to pray.
Right. All right.
I have one more, if you don't mind.
Definitely.
Okay, so this one is more on the seller side. I find, and maybe some of the people on the chat, the online here could agree, that sellers wanting to overprice their properties. And there's only so much control we have over that. We can give our advice, but at the end of the day, the seller is entitled to list the property at the price that he chooses to. So real estate, like any other commodity, works based on free market economics. And that means that it functions on the laws of demand and supply, right? At some point in time, the market corrects itself. And the prices of homes on the market will have to meet the prices customers are actually willing to pay for them.
Yep.
Yeah. Or they will simply remain on market. There's a saying that we have in real estate, which is a home well listed is a home half sold.
Excellent. All right, so we have questions coming in thick and fast. This is one question coming in here from Dixon Pascal. He's asking, do you need a certificate of payment when buying land?
A certificate of payment? Yes, you can get a certificate of payment or a land and building tax receipt. They usually can function like one and of the same. So this is a document that says that the land and building taxes have been paid up to 2009, which is the last time that they were in effect. So once it is up to date, it should be fine, whether it's a certificate of payment or the land and building tax receipt itself.
Okay, excellent. And another one from Anton Gerard. How difficult or what is the process of getting unapproved land approved?
That's a really great question. Unfortunately, I don't have much experience with that process, but I have heard from clients of mine about their difficulties. I understand that it's supposed to take the minister 2 months to respond to a request for the conversion of land, let's say from agricultural to residential, or to get town and country approvals in general for a piece of land. I haven't done that process, so I can't say for myself how easy or how difficult it is. But I know things do require some sort of encouragement to move along.
So I could touch on this one a little bit. So basically, you need to know a few things. Sorry, Rachel, can we mute that person? So you need to know a few things like if you're buying a piece of land that's a part of another larger portion of land, you'll need subdivision approval. If you don't have that, then your land's in jeopardy. And then your zoning. Someone asked the question like, how do you find out what's zoned for residential from agricultural land? And you could actually find that out on the planning Ministry Planning portal. They have a map that shows you the kind of like zoning areas for different parts of Trinidad. So I don't know, all those things, all of that has to go through planning, which will be a long process. All right. There's another question here. Jada asks, what is the most challenging part of being a real estate agent?
I think I kind of touched on that when I brought up the pain points, but
Right.
to be more specific and personal, I would say it's really managing the high influx of inquiries that we get sometimes. Like sometimes my phone has over 40, 50 messages sometimes on WhatsApp, and I'm trying to keep up with responding to these people. So it does require a lot of me, and thankfully I have an assistant to help me out with that. But I would say giving everyone the attention that they need, because this isn't a fly-by-night process. You're not buying a shoes or a shirt, you're buying a piece of property. This is the biggest investment that you would like to make in your life. So I would like to offer that person as much of my dedicated attention as possible. And sometimes it can be difficult giving that to so many people all at once.
Okay. Perfect. All right, a few more coming in. Hope you're okay. Quinton asks, what's the difference between freehold and leasehold land?
Okay, so maybe I can start with freehold. As the name sort of suggests, there's no covenant or there's no restriction when it comes to owning the land. The person owns the land free of any sort of restrictions in a sense. So with leasehold land, you sort of have a right to occupy the land, but leasehold land, you own the land entirely without any restrictions. So with leasehold land, you typically find there's a period attached to it. In some cases, it's 99 years or 199, and I've even seen as much as 999 years. So when this time period elapses, if it's government land, you may have to go back to the government and renew that piece of land. Or if it's land that was subdivided by a larger company, you may have to go back to that management company to get it renewed. But the main difference is that leasehold land, you have a right to use the land within that time frame. With freehold land, you own the land totally without any restrictions. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Carla is asking, how risky is it to buy Caroni land?
I specifically stay away from Caroni land because of how complicated it could get. I honestly don't know much about Caroni land. I wish I could answer you, but maybe I can look into that, and hopefully if we're able to connect after, maybe on a call, I could get on to her with the information.
Perfect. Trisha Clark is asking, which kind of jumps into the idea of buying land as a foreigner. Are there residency requirements to purchase land in Trinidad or Tobago?
Great question. So for locals, obviously none really. And for international persons looking to invest in Trinidad and Tobago, they are allowed to purchase up to 1 acre of residential land without any restrictions. And for commercial purposes, they are allowed to purchase as much as 5 acres. Now, if you're buying land that is in excess of the 1 acre for residential or 5 acres for commercial, you will be required to get a foreign investment license available from the Ministry of Legal Affairs. And you will be required to purchase that piece of land in the currency of where the foreign person is from. So it's a way of bringing in foreign currency into our country while benefiting the person through the ownership of land.
All right, that's interesting one. And Gregory's given us some useful information in the chat box as well. Thanks a lot, Gregory. So our question for you as a real estate agent if you were going to invest in land, where would you be investing right now?
I love that one. The first thing that comes to my mind, honestly, is Tobago. I mean, who doesn't like Tobago? Tobago is it's a little bit more slow pace. It's relaxing, beautiful atmosphere, beautiful people, and it's really big on tourism, right? During the pandemic, we saw a lot of staycations popping up, and I'm sure that the short-term rental market is probably booming in Tobago right now, especially with the Tobago Carnival happening. And there's lots of different events around the year that would benefit an investor if they were to, purchase property over there. So I would probably go towards Tobago. However, for the sake of, persons on the call who may more be looking at buying a piece of land for their dream home in Trinidad because of, working restrictions, I would probably stick to neighborhoods that are on the cusp of development. And when I say on the cusp of development, I am referring to places where you're outside of the urban areas, but you're not really in the rural areas. So somewhat of a suburban area. Those places I would say are like Santa Cruz. I really like Santa Cruz, and maybe I'm biased because I'm from Santa Cruz. There's Maracas, St. Joseph. I think that's a great area to invest into. And even Brazil, Talparo, it's not as far as some people may think. I've done the drive several times, and I've been noticing a lot of developers are buying property up on that side. So why not be your own developer and get your land and build something in a neighborhood that is not as costly?
Okay, all right. We have two more sort of residence questions. First one from Tyra. She says, if you have a permanent residency here, do you have any restrictions? If you're a foreigner, but you have permanent residency, would you be restricted?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about that. Is it that they have dual citizenship? And they've been
they're a permanent resident here, but they're a foreigner.
Okay, they're originally a citizen of another country.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think the same would apply for foreign persons, because they're really not a citizen of this country. They're really from another country. So they will be required to get the foreign investment license if they were purchasing outside of the restrictions based on the land amounts that I mentioned.
Okay. And Christopher is asking, a Trinidadian citizen who lives abroad, do they qualify as international or local specifically? I mean, I think you'd be a citizen.
That's right, absolutely.
You could come back and buy land.
Once you're born in Trinidad and you have on your birth certificate, you were born at Mount Toba, Port of Spain General, you're considered a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah. So another question here is like, what's the market doing right now? Is it a buyer's market or a seller's market?
That's a great question. And I get this question all the time, and I would answer by saying it depends, because as a buyer, it will vary versus a seller. But I would say that homes are they're really flying off the market right now, because buyers are finally taking advantage of the price reductions that would have happened during the COVID period, right? As it is right now, prices kind of remain linear across the board. However, they're very negotiable, because the sellers kind of realize that they would have waited for a 2-year period, and they are more motivated now than ever to get the homes off the market. Right. I even sold a couple of properties under market value in the pandemic and within recency as well. Yeah, so I believe we're still in a buyer's market right now.
Okay.
And I would encourage buyers to pull the trigger and invest now if they can. because eventually the sellers are going to catch on and realize what is happening, that the demand has increased, and eventually the prices are going to start going back up because they would realize what is happening based on supply and demand.
Right. Okay, so somebody has a follow-up to their first question. What is your take on buying agricultural land and developing it to residential land? And how is this done?
This is done through applying to the minister at the Town and Country Planning Development, the Ministry of Town and Country. I believe the initial step is to send in the application, and the minister is going to reject the application firstly, because that area was probably zoned for agricultural for a particular reason. So you are now asking them to change it from agricultural to residential. So they will now examine, let's say, what is the distance between another residential parcel of land to where this one is located. And if you could come up with the compelling reasons after your application has been rejected, then they will consider it again, and then the application may be approved. But it comes back down to zoning.
Yep. So I could add to this as well. So you'll send in your outline, and they'll probably reject it, and then you'd have to appeal it. And to appeal, you have to show that there's a trend leaning towards residential heading into that area. So that's like kind of the direction that would take. All right. I hope that helped. Another question here. Can buying land versus buying an existing home end up being more expensive because of bridging finance? Good question.
That's an exceptional question. Okay, so
that's an age-old question.
Yeah. I know based on the persons that I've spoken to who have done bridging finance, they complain a lot about it because you would end up paying two loans at any given time. You're paying a loan on the land and you're paying the loan for the construction, which can become very burdensome. So, I mean, if you don't have the patience and the finances to deal with that, I would encourage you to probably buy something that is built already. But if you want to customize something, make it more personal, then you have certain consequences to bear for a greater return later on. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're coming close to our 45-minute mark. Any other questions? Anybody would like to add? Any remarks you'd like to make, Mattheaus? Anything additional you didn't touch on?
Not that I can think of, but I'm sure the comment section is going crazy.
I think I could touch on that buying land versus buying an existing property. If you can find something that suits your exact needs, so suits your non-negotiables, then you could buy an existing house and be happy. But I mean, if you're gonna buy it and then renovate it, then it's gonna end up being comparable to just going from scratch. And your bridging finance will depend on how fast your builders operate, how fast you could get from breaking ground to your completion certificate. And that's usually where you try to kind of squeeze as much as you can. So yeah, another one, suggest on seeking out a fixer-upper. Oh, so someone is asking if you have any suggestions on seeking out fixer-uppers. It's a good question. Actually, I think I asked you that recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, you did. I remember. Well, it all depends on the reason why you're buying the fixer-upper. Some people buy them for investment purposes to resell it and put it back on the market, or some people buy them simply for their own dwelling residences. For persons buying it for investment purposes, I would say you're looking for properties within a location that will attract a significant pool of buyers, because you don't want to buy something in an area that makes it even harder to sell after you would have done the work to renovate it. So finding a property in a decent location is important when it comes to fixer-uppers, and ensuring that you have a decent amount of equity in this property. So when you're negotiating on the price, you want to see how much of a good price you can get based on the amount of profit that you're trying to make. When it comes to buying a fixer-upper for using it simply as your dwelling, I would say it's important to bear in mind the budget that you have for the renovations, because that will determine whether you can actually complete the fixer-upper or not.
Right.
So, that is what I would mention about that.
Okay, nice. Another person has another question. What's the difference between a listing agent and a selling agent?
They are the exact same thing.
Yeah.
There's no difference. Yeah. Remember, the listing agents represent the sellers, so they are by default the selling agent.
So, Robert, Carla has a question here that will be answered in our next webinar.
Yes,
So
it will be.
if you want to read out Carla's question and give them a little bit of insight into our next webinar.
Excellent. So Carla says, I'm scared of architects and plan drawers. The pricing is sometimes outrageous. What's a reasonable or way to calculate costs for these services? So Carla, that's a great question. And we'll be talking about the hidden costs of construction in our next webinar. Now, you have to understand that building is a very custom thing. So, when you're dealing with custom design, things end up to be a bit more, the investment might be larger, right? But the return is much bigger as well. So the return in pride and getting what you love, and even the resale value, right? So I wouldn't. If you're looking to invest in a designer, I wouldn't look at the price first. Or look at what you're getting, right? So please join us for the next webinar as well. So we'll talk some more about that for sure. Javid, okay, we're going to take two more questions. Javid is asking, do crime and flooding affect land price? Good question.
Absolutely. Because that means that the demand for those areas would significantly reduce. This is an area that doesn't experience that. So if demand has reduced, prices naturally take the same direction.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, I want to thank Mattheaus of Propsolve Realty for shaking off the fears and coming on here. And you see, I tell you, we're going to have breakfast tomorrow.
Yes, we are going to have breakfast. I mean, it was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed engaging with the audience. The questions that they asked are very pertinent questions. And I can see that the market is hungry for more information like this. I know most real estate agents don't take the time to educate the public as much as they should. And I'm happy that I am able to be a part of the change for that. I do want to thank Robert and his team at Aki Workshop for hosting a phenomenal webinar and giving me this platform to, come and share this information with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for accepting. And thank everybody for coming and the lovely questions. We'll be putting together a little package to send out to everyone with the video link so you could rewatch it. Plus we'll chop it up a little bit to get the kind of sweet spots for you. And we'll also put a PDF document together just with the kind of key points that we discussed. All right. And if anybody has any further questions, feel free to reach out to either one of us. We'll put our contact information in the PDF document. So thank you all and see you at our next webinar, where we'll be talking about the hidden costs or the hidden costs of construction. Good night. See you later, buddy.
Take care.
Bye.